Hello everyone, hope you find yourself having a great day. I've got a neat little tutorial for you today. More a tutorial in combination with a little exercise to get you acclimated with some of the texturing functions in Cinema 4D. And I think what I'm going to do today is put together a realistic looking a log that might be derived from a tree that's been cut down, and maybe it's been cut up into smaller log type sections, maybe for use for some firewood. But I'm going to get started, and it's very simple. I'm using some textures. I'm using two textures that I downloaded from Google Images. I did a search for bark, and I did a search for a log end. Now the bark is going to be the outer wrapping of the log, and then the bark end is what's going to be on the top, maybe where the saw blade cut through. So let's get started. I'm going to drop in a cylinder into my scene, and I'm going to shape this cylinder, make it a little bit stubby and a little bit fat so that it gives the idea of a log, like a section of log that's suitable for chopping further into firewood. I'm going to go into my front view, and I'm going to raise the bottom so that it's on my red floor plane. We'll get in close here, and it can be just below it or on it as close as you can get it. That's just about good enough. Alright, I'm going to jump back into my perspective view. Now what I'm going to do, we're going to give this many more height and width segments. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock the rotational segments up to about 100 and my height segments up to about 100 also. Now this is going to give us much more leniency in regards to shaping this to give it a more organic look. Now when you do this, when you add more segments, you're also going to increase your render time. But this shouldn't be too bad for this example that we're going to work on today. So what I'm going to do is, while I've got it selected, I'm going to make it editable, and I'm going to press C on my keyboard, and you'll see my little icon change so that it's now editable. And we're going to begin by creating a texture. I'm going to double click down here, create a texture. I'm going to double click it again and go in and edit the properties for that texture. Now we're going to disable specular, and we're going to select our color channel. And then under texture, we're going to browse to the log bark, the bark texture. I'll make the textures and this project file available in a zip file in the description below, so you'll be able to download it all and get a head start and maybe look at what we've done today in this example, and then recreate it yourself by watching the video again. So I'm going to open that, and everything looks good there. I'm going to apply a bump to this, and that's going to simulate a bump, a texture, an abnormal surface. And it won't actually provide the depth and height information. It's just going to simulate that to help further pull off the solution. I'm going to go under displacement. I'll put a check beside it, and we're going to, again, under texture, we're going to browse to the same texture. And what this displacement is going to do is it's going to use the dark and light values to create depth information and distort our mesh based on the light and dark information. I'm going to reduce it a little bit. I'm going to knock it down to about 3. And the strength at 100% is far too strong. I'm going to take it back down to the middle here where you'll see it's at 1%. You can go, for this example, anywhere between 10 and 15%. I'm going to put, let's go to about 12 or 11 or 12 or whatever, and get my slider to cooperate with. So about 12%, and we're all set there. All right. We're going to duplicate this one again because we're going to use it for a top ridge. But let's rename this here outer bark. Okay. And let's duplicate it by selecting it, control click and drag, and we'll make another one. This one here, we're going to go into it, and we're going to call this ridge. And with this one, we're going to turn off the displacement. We'll leave the bump, but we're going to turn off the displacement. You'll see why in a little bit. Okay, so what we've got is our top, and that's going to require a different texture. So while we've got this in an editable position, we're going to take our face selection tool. All right, we're going to select this top area, or we can select the outer area. But before we do that, let's go ahead and we're going to create our third texture for this top piece. Double click down here. We've created a new material. We'll just call that the rings. And we're going to turn the specular off. We're going to go into our color channel. And again, under texture, we're going to browse to that second texture that we've got, which is the log end. Okay. At this point, we're not going to apply any displacement, but we will go ahead and give it a bump. All right. We're going to browse for that bump texture, which is again going to be the same exact texture that we've used for the irregular texture on this. Okay. So we're good here. Let's close that out. Now, we're going to select this top area and apply our rings to that. So let's go up under top, under select. Let's do a loop selection, and we're going to select that entire top piece. So we don't have anything on the side. We only have what's on top. While that's selected, drag this texture onto that. Okay. So if we get a quick render, you'll see that it just simply placed that on there in a fashion that's not really going to be suitable for us. We want to go, while it's selected, and go under projection type, and we're going to tell it flat. Okay. Let's get another render, and you'll see that it's changed that even further. So what do we want to do? I think what I need to do is tell it a frontal projection, and that gives us a much better believability on the orientation of these outer crack grains extending out like spokes on a wheel towards the outer portion of this. Let's go into our texture positioning tool, and we should be able to move this guy around. And hopefully get that positioned up a little bit better. Let's see if we can scale it out a little bit. I need to see if I can move that guy. Whoops, I'm actually scaling the faces. We don't want to do that. What I'd likely do here is increase my UV links, which will actually make it smaller. Let's go to 3 and 3. Get a look at that. Getting a little more suitable. We can move that guy over a little bit. I think our issue is with our frontal. Let's try our flat. I think that's what we're going to need, being a flat projection. I'll rotate that 90 degrees. Get a quick render here. And I think what I may need to do is go back and reduce those tiles to, let's take it back to 1 and 1. Get a quick render. I think maybe that's going to work better for us, and then we'll see if we can just move those tiles. We're going to try to get this center lined up with our center. It's a little difficult to see just for the way that the viewport handles this. We're getting closer. Something about like that. Okay, so remember we went from, with our texture, we went with a YUV mapping, then we tried flat, then we tried cylindrical, and we're back to flat now. Okay, and what I did is initially I'd upsized my texture from 1 to 3, and now we're back at 1. So just remember, we're back at what we originally started at, and all those adjustments were really unnecessary. But sometimes, depending on the texture, the size of the texture that you download in regards to the area that it's being applied may need to be tweaked with these different settings. But I think we're looking good here. Okay, so we're going to take now our outer rings, but we're going to select our faces on our outer area here. So I'm going to deselect everything. I'm going to say select loop selection, or maybe we'll try a ring selection, or maybe we'll do a Control A, and then we'll just do a Control or Shift click or Control click and deselect that top so that we have the sides all selected. This bottom is insignificant. We're not going to really see that, so we'll just leave it the way it is. Now, while we've got that selected, you see we have all the side selected and not the top. We're going to drag the outer texture onto that, and let's get a quick render. And you see we've got already a very basic log starting. Our outer texture is a little large, it's a little bulky for what we're going to do here. Now this one we are going to go and change it to a cylindrical mapping, and we're going to definitely increase this to about 3. That's going to shrink that bark size and just make it a little more suitable for a log of this size. Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll drop in a plane. This is just going to give us a floor so that we can cast shadows on it. It's now editable, and if I can get this plane to cooperate and select it, I'm going to scale that out, and we'll have a little floor going here so that we can at least cast some shadows on it. I'll go ahead and drop a light in the scene, just a regular light. I'm going to raise that up, bring it back, and something about like that, where we've got a dark side and a well-lit side. So let's take a quick render, and we'll see we're getting a little closer in regards to having multiple surfaces on the same object. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to take our cylinder and we're going to create a HyperNURB, and we're going to take this cylinder and we're going to drag it into the HyperNURB to where we have a down arrow. Okay, and at this point, if you select that HyperNURB, you'll see that it's creating a bunch more surfaces for us to give ourselves a lot more detail. Now this does increase your render times. Something else that's important is while your HyperNURBS is selected, under your Object tab, you're going to want to change the sub-editor or subdivision editor and subdivision renderer to be the same. Alright, so we're good there. And next what we're going to do is we're going to apply a little bit of additional texturing to the side of this. Now select your cylinder, and we're going to get our face selection tool. We're going to click off and deselect everything. Under select, we're going to go to loop selection. Whoops, select ring selection. And we're going to select some vertical rings, just like we see here. And what we're going to do is we're going to Control click or Shift click and just give it an irregular. We don't want that one. We want only the verticals. So let's start back over. Shift click, Shift click. And we want to avoid the, let's take that HyperNURB, let's take that cylinder out just for now. We want to select vertical bands. And see how my little ring, I've got a horizontal band wrapped around. We want to try to avoid that. We want to get the straight up and down vertical ones. So Shift click, and we're just going to work our way around in irregular distances apart. Some can be closer, some can be further. And because we're only going to render one side of this, it's not necessary to go all the way around, but I guess for this example we'll do that. And make our way around here. Just about there. Okay, so you're going to end up with something like this. Some further apart, some closer apart, and looks about good. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take, while these are selected, we're going to go under Mesh, Transform Tools, Magnet. Okay, so we've got our magnet brush. This is a very large brush, and you can adjust the size by changing the radius down here in your bottom right under options. Okay, I'm going to knock that down to about 15, and you'll see my brush is smaller now. Now what we're going to do is you need to be facing the piece you're working on, straight on. Okay, if you're at a side, this tool responds kind of weird, so you should be facing this area you're going to work on. And you'll click and drag up, and it will push this in. And if you click and drag and pull towards you, the mouse, it will drag it out. So we're just going to go along, give some variation, some in, some out. And what this is doing is it's giving a little bit of different variations in the surface of these, where some are coming out more than others, some are going in. And it's just going to provide some irregularities on our surfaces here that will provide extra bump information. It will give a little bit more depth, and it's going to really help sell this in regards to making it more believable. So I'm going to pull some in, I'm going to push some back, and I'm going to increase my brush size. I'll go to about 25 on this now, so I can just kind of speed things up. Some out, some in, back out again, maybe in right there. And you see, if you look at the side here, we're getting some wiggle going on to give our log, our simulation here, a little bit more believability and irregularity just to help sell it. So I'm going to push these guys in and pull some of these out. Now that HyperNURB that we're going to put this back into in a little bit is really going to smooth this out and make it a much more believable sell here. So this one's going to come out. Pull this one out. Pull that one out. We'll push that guy in. And if you even pull them off to the side a little bit, you get a little bit of wiggle going. We'll pull that out. The ones that go out tend to provide a better shadow effect just because of the way the light hits these. But we'll go ahead and play with them all. And it seems that if you alternate up and down, in and out, it just helps to, I'm going to knock my brush back down to about 10. Just gives myself seems like a little tighter area to work with. So we're going to get around here. I'm not going to bother with the back just for simplicity and to speed this up a little bit. We'll go back up again to about 20. Pull some out. See, those larger numbers tend to give you a gentler curve. I'm going to try to do about half of this so that we just save a little bit of time here on this tutorial. And I think we're looking pretty good there. We've got a variety of different shapes going on. Let's get a quick render. And you'll see, because we're not in that HyperNURB, render's going much faster. And some of our lines that we've got going here are just maybe not strong enough. I'll pull a few more out. And in those dark areas over here where it's shadowed, a little bit of light might creep around and catch a highlight, and it really helps. Okay, so let's drag our cylinder back into our HyperNURB, get another render. And you'll see we've got a little bit over here. See where I was talking about how one of the high pieces stick out and the light hits it a little bit better. Okay, see it again over here. We're getting a little highlight on that. A little bit of irregularity there. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to deselect everything, and we're going to take make sure our cylinder is selected. We're going to do again let me get myself back into the correct mode here. Face selection tool, deselect everything, select loop selection. Might need to be out here again just to see that. Alright, select ring selection. And maybe we'll fill this, see if we can fill that in. Always get it wrong with these selection methods here. Might need to do a Control A. That's what I'll do. I'll do Control A. Control A. I'm going to select everything. And at this point, I'm going to deselect the top with a Control click to deselect that top. So I've just got the side selected. Now, sorry for all that jumbling that we did there, but our ultimate goal here is to get all of our sides selected. And so what I did is I selected everything, and then I deselected the top. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go back under our tools, or I'm sorry, mesh, create tools, magnet, or transform tools magnet. And here we're going to do, I guess I'll start out with the 20 size brush. So I'm going to push in on that whole group, pull out maybe on this one. So now what we're doing is we're just giving this log some deformities overall on top of the ones that we'd put in individually, just to give it an old rough log look. Just some irregularities, that's all we're going for. They're not big ones, they're just indentations and ones that come out, ones that go in. And I'm going to increase the radius. I'll go up to about 50 on this here. It's going to give us a bigger brush, and it's going to let us play with this a little bit more. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a bigger base by pulling out substantially on the base, just to give it some deformity. You see what I'm doing there? I'm just giving it some irregularity. And all these at the bottom I'm pulling out. I'm left clicking and pulling to the right. Just to give it some abnormality. Maybe on the top I'm going to push in a little bit. Maybe I'll give it a good little bulge here. Whoops. Get in too far and you'll pull away that from the top. Something about like that. We've just got an irregularly shaped log, so let's get a quick render. Alright, so we're coming along there. We've got some, it's not just a cylinder anymore, it's taking on more of a look of a log. So if we drop that cylinder back into our HyperNURB and render it now, you'll see that we're coming along a lot better than we were before. Okay, now with our light, let's get this positioned a little bit better. We'll move it up, back over this way, out a little bit just so it's a little softer. And I'm going to take into the light, and under the shadow properties, I'm going to tell it to be a soft shadow. And I'm going to knock its density down to about 80. And I'm going to increase its matte quality resolution to about 750. It's just going to help make the light a much more believable, smoother light. And you can see now we've got a shadow. And it's looking a little bit better. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take, remember we created a texture for a ridge. This texture, when this log would have been cut, would not have extended cleanly to the edge. There would have been a thickness, portion of bark thickness here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my cylinder. I'm going to drag it back out of the HyperNURB just for ease of use. Deselect everything. Now I'm going to click, I'm going to do a, whoops, get my selection tool, do a loop selection, and I'm going to click that top so that I only have the top selected, nothing else is selected. Now while it's selected, I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Extrude Inner. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag to my left a little bit so that I'm forming this little thickness here. Let me get in close where you can see. What I've done is I've extruded inner and I've created this thin ring around here. That's what we're going to give this extra little piece of texture to that is of that ridge. So let's select just that ridge. Make sure we've deselected everything. And we're going to make sure we selected our cylinder. Going to select, oops, let me get on my face selection tool. Select, loop selection, And we're going to try to grab that little ring. And that's what we've got. We just want that ring selected. We're going to grab that ridge texture and drop it right on our ring so that only it's textured with a separate pattern that doesn't have that bump map applied. Now here, I'm going to go under it and I want to tell it flat. Okay. And probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to bump that up to about 5 and 5. That makes the texture smaller so that it fits in a little bit better and is a little bit more believable. So if I back up right here, I'll get a whole different look to where now that I've got my log and I've got that little extra thickness of bark happening along that edge. Okay. So one more thing that I can do is if I can go under my edit and my render settings, I can add the effect of an ambient occlusion. I'm going to leave it at default. And what this is going to do is it's going to provide a little bit more believability where surfaces change directions. So let's get a render there. And you'll see that we're coming right along here in regards to a much more believable log, whereas previously we started out with a cylinder. Now you can take it a little bit further and copy this entire piece. Let me drop our cylinder back into our HyperNURBS just for a render in that regard. Let's see if we get a different look. It should be a lot smoother, a lot cleaner, a lot more believable. Except for our top texture there. Let's go ahead and play with that top texture that we dropped in. See how we've got lines happening there? Let's tell it a frontal projection. Now that it would match that up in regards to however we're looking at it. See how that texture's kind of floating in there? And it's probably going to give us a much better, more believable look. Yeah. And you can play around with these different types of projection. You may want to try that YUV or UVW and see what you get. See if it's more acceptable for you. I just like to play with these a lot and see what you get. Shrink wrapping, flat, cylindrical. See, cylindrical gives us an entirely different look. Flat gives us this type of line look. Spatial actually looks pretty good. Let's take a look at that. And I think that looks pretty good. So what we could even take this another step further is select our HyperNURBS and click and drag, and we'll create a duplicate. Let's pull our duplicate out, and we're going to scale this guy down considerably. We won't use the HyperNURBS on this one. Let's just add unnecessary render time to it. So let's take this guy and we'll drag it out. That HyperNURB, we'll delete the HyperNURB, and we're going to continue to scale this down to resemble a branch that may have stuck out of this tree. We're going to rotate it, put a little bit of an angle on it, and then we'll just move this guy into that log to where it looked like maybe it was a branch that was growing out of the side, and then the lumberjack dude got in there and cut that log off. Take another render. And so we've got us another little log here, just to add a little bit more believability to it. You play around with this. Just remember that when you're dealing with your HyperNURBS, your subdivision count's going to increase your render time. And play with these extrusions, how we did our vertical stripes on the side. Give some in, some out. You can see maybe I went a little overboard and going in a little bit too deep on these here, but you'll play with it. You'll get the hang of it. And again, on your textures, play with those. These are just some of the first I found. You can get a lot better You can even do bump maps on this top piece, which really helps sell it and make things just a little bit more believable, because it's all about believability when you're modeling, and the light that you apply to your models, and the level of quality of rendering that you provide. So hope you found this interesting. Remember, if you like my channel, comment, rate, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.